So the tree I'm going to work on today is a boxwood, a little tiny thing. Well, no, it's not very big. It's developing nicely. I've been working on this one for, well, decades. It's a long story. I'll probably tell some of the story as I work, but it's the tree I've had in my collection the longest. It's also the only tree that I've given a name to. Its name is Milo. And Milo is sitting in a pot that I made. It's a ceramic pot that is made to look like a wooden grow box. And all it really needs right now is a little bit of midsummer pruning, maybe some directional wiring, fostering a little more ramification and shaping. But it's very healthy. It's doing well in its pot. It doesn't need to be repotted. It's not a good time of year to repot anyway. So my favorite tree, Milo. We'll get started. A little something to drink with my favorite shot glass. This is my souvenir from the 1988 World Series. I bought this the night Kirk Gibson hit his home run against the Oakland A's. It was the only souvenir I could afford because I was a young man with very little means and I was at a very expensive ticket. So to game one of the 88 World Series, to Milo, to bonsai. Let's give it a shot. This is Milo. Milo has been in my collection for a very long time. It obviously has some angles that wouldn't make a good front. It's got a couple little tiny ants too. It's got some angles that make for kind of a nice front. It's in need of a little bit of directional pruning, a little bit more fine ramification, a little better establishment of an apex. This is going to be one of those more of a dome-like canopy shape, I suspect, but you never know. I may wire this up a little tiny bit to make for a sharper apex. I'm just not sure. But I like this little tree. This is one of my favorite trees. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is pluck the little bits of dead material and live weeds. And then I guess I'll start talking about the tree. Let's get you into the center. So this tree, well, first of all, it's in another pot that I made. This is another one of my more unorthodox pots. I'll do a close-up of some of the features of the pot. So this pot is meant to look like it's made of wood. And screwed together. This was one of my first attempts at making a faux wooden grow box pot. That's not a crack, by the way, that's a feature. And yeah, I kind of like it. It's not the best. I have done better work since then, but this was my first, so I kind of like it. So when I first got into bonsai, I didn't really know what I was doing. Didn't have a teacher. I was young. I didn't really take an active role in the clubs because most of the other club members were much older than me, and they all had some really cool trees, and I just had stuff like Milo here. At the time, Milo was a 1 gallon pencil neck boxwood, and yeah, nothing that I would show anybody or even bring to a meeting to work on. Not surprisingly, most of my trees did not do great. I also hadn't spent a lot of time learning the horticulture at that point, so I didn't even know how to keep some of the trees alive. I think every single pine that I owned before about 5 years ago I killed, and that includes when I got back into bonsai. But anyways, sometime around, I don't know, the year 1999, 2000, somewhere along there, I gave up on bonsai completely. And at the time, I had killed all of my trees except for 2. Milo here and another boxwood that is still in my collection, but it's not great. It's got a big, long, fat trunk that doesn't have any movement. There's just not a lot of interest in it. So around the summer of 2012 or 2013, I was at the fair, and one of the clubs that I used to belong to had a bonsai tree exhibit, and we walked through the exhibit, and my younger daughter was really digging it. And I told her, I used to do this. None of my trees look quite this nice, but I used to do that, and I kind of know how to do this, and I've still got pots and tools at home because, I didn't kill the pots with the tools. And I said, if you really want to try it, we can go get some plants and we can go to a club meeting. And it turned out there was a meeting that very night, and we ended up going to it. And it was a demonstration on a Japanese black pine. I think it was Roy Nagatoshi doing the demo, and it was pretty impressive. My daughter got very interested in bonsai at that point, so I got back into it. The second time around, I did a lot better. I got a teacher. I'll talk about him in a subsequent video, I'm sure. But that's dead, isn't it? But the second time around, I had to buy all new material, with 2 exceptions, these 2 boxwoods. And so this one, like the other one, was growing up on the hill in my backyard, and it was a big bushy thing. So I dug it out, I put it into a bonsai pot that was about this big, about this deep, and I had this idea that I was going to style it to make it look kind of like one of these magnificent California oak trees that we've got growing up in like up at Irvine Park, near Irvine Lake in Orange County, where these oak trees have been there for hundreds of years, and they've got these huge undulating thick lower branches that end up going all the way to the ground, and kids can just run and jump up on and climb the tree by walking up one of its primary branches. I thought, that's a cool inspiration for this tree. So that's what I did. I put it in this pot, and I started trying to prune it to make it look like this big oak-like canopy. And about a year later, Roy came back to the club, and this time it was for a members tree critique and maybe styling. And so we brought this tree. And again, it was huge. And Roy took a look at the tree, and he said, "This is a good tree, but this is not your tree," he said. And then he took a red Sharpie, and he started somewhere around here, and he went up like this, and then this branch went a little bit to the side here. So he went up there, and then it cut back to a primary branch off of the trunk here, and he went to there, and he goes, "That is your tree." Oh, okay. And I was thinking, well, that's gonna be a lot less tree. And before I could even fully process it, he had grabbed a saw, and he cut this big old branch completely off. And I don't know exactly what my face looked like, but it must have been pretty funny, because the whole room started laughing at me. And he looks back and goes, "It's okay, I cut." And I go, "Yeah, I guess so. You're the expert. Do what you think is best for the tree." And boy, did he cut that thing back. And I mean, he cut it back to, just this tiny little leaf here. And so my daughter was standing up there next to me, and she was in as much shock as I was. But okay, fine. This is going to be like a one-leaf tree or something for a while. And he goes, "Don't worry about it," he said. It'll start popping buds almost immediately. And so we put our faith in Roy and waited, and sure enough, within a few weeks, it had buds popping out all over the place. And so after a while, somewhere around here, there was a big bunch of foliage, or maybe it was around here, and then up at the top there was a big old round puffy ball of foliage, and nothing in between. And we just had to let it grow out like that for a good long time. And then at some point, I decided to cut this off, or maybe it was this, I don't remember. But I cut it down to, I don't know, here-ish. So it became quite a bit shorter yet again. And then I tried to grow it out to something similar to the way it looks right now. And it's had yet more setbacks even since then. We had a fire roll through here about a year and a half ago, and it was one of those big fires. It got to within about 200 yards of our house, and it was on a windy day. And as far as the tree is concerned, the fire wasn't the problem, the wind was the problem. And it blew a branch off of one of my trees, just completely off, and it landed right on top of Milo. And so Milo's apex used to be coming off of right here. There it is. Right there. It came up not very far, but there was the apex, and that broke off completely. And what I had was a little sprig like this coming out right here, and I had to kind of figure out how to develop a new top. And this is kind of a weird messed up branching here. It's a bar branch coming off of the main trunk basically, but where's my front? There's my front. But you can't really tell because the bar comes out and immediately goes in that direction, and in the back of course it goes off as well. So the long and short of it is, this becomes my apex, and at some point I'm gonna wire it up a little tiny bit and make that point a little bit higher. Maybe now is finally the time to get rid of this branch right there. Yeah. Yes, it is. So this pad here is really, it's developing into a nice tight foliage pad. It's got depth, but it's relatively flat. I don't have a whole bunch of stragglers sending growth straight down. Just cut off a branch instead of a leaf. This needs a little bit more mass to it, and I'm going to have it coming down more. Once it's at this angle, I'll let it just kind of go out. This is developing nicely. This hasn't really established a flat plane the way I want it to, so I'll keep working on that. Center here, I don't want that. That's coming off of the back branch, I don't want that. I want this going up and out, not back in. I really want this to start developing a lot more, so I'm going to take, this is an area that's growing strongly, and I need to divert some of the tree's energy away from that toward this. So the last time I worked on this tree, this was just one little branch like this. So it's starting to thicken up and it's starting to ramify. And eventually it's going to come in to this area here. think I'm gonna clean up the scar over here a little tiny bit. Anyhow, the reason for the name that my children gave this tree comes from a character in a cartoon series, Avatar: The Last Airbender. And the character in this show, gosh, do I have wire thick enough to do that? Was doing training of some sort. And the character's name was Milo. And there was some line that they remembered.
Dance like the wind. Be the leaf.
And my kids looked at this tree after Roy had cut it back to next to nothing that day at the club meeting. And they laughed and they said, "Be the leaf," to this little tree. And then they started calling it Milo. Okay. That was coming forward quite a bit more. We've now got it going not quite completely vertical, but much closer to vertical. And since this, yeah, I'm probably going to want this to go over this direction slightly. So I'll make that happen. And then eventually this will come down farther. In fact, we'll start that process right now. So I'll just attach it to the primary part of that branch. Let's try that. I grew up reading in books that you should try and make all of your wiring at a 45-degree angle, and that really hasn't worked out for me. I've found that, first of all, sometimes you just have to vary the angle of your wiring. And secondly, even if you're trying to be kind of uniform, 45 is not the number. Maybe like 60 is the number. So I'm gonna just pull this down and out in this direction a little tiny bit, filling in that gap. And then this, we're gonna have going out like that. And we're slowly turning this into a plane that's just going to go all the way across the back. And the last thing left to do, look how sloppy that looks. But, you know, it's anchored solidly, so it did its job. So now I need to pull this down, and honestly, I think the easiest way to do that isn't even by wiring, well, at least not the traditional way, by pulling it down. And I think I don't have any tubing for this, but I don't think I necessarily need it. Because it doesn't have to pull very hard. So I don't think it's going to bite into the bark, but I can take this wire here, go underneath the root, and attach. I'll pull from a little bit farther forward on the branch, like around here. I'm being bitten by bugs. I think it's about time to wrap this up. Now, if I needed to, I could pull this down farther by putting a stick in here and just twisting it, but that actually well, almost gets me down where I want. Maybe I will put a stick in there. Yeah. Okay. So I'll demo that too. Foliage come from. There we go. Okay. Didn't hear any snaps. That's good. If I want to tighten it further and pull it down farther, I don't really think I do, but if I wanted to, I just stick a little piece of wood in back there and just tighten up another notch. But yeah, there we go. Let's see, take one more little nibble there. See anything else? And again, I think that's my front. So lower branch, let this pad come out here, then this pad, then this pad. This pad will develop here. Eventually this will turn into a little small pad. That will turn into a little small pad, and then we'll have just a tiny little tuft at the top. There's my front. Yeah, well, you can really see from that angle how much foliage needs to fill in, but it's a boxwood, so it'll do it. At some point also, probably going to carve a little bit more of this off, but don't need to now. It's in the back anyway, so there's really kind of no rush. But there it is, one of my favorite trees, a little boxwood named Milo. Coming along nicely.